Making a crib to hoist a 1,750-pound Anyang power hammer. William Hovey Smith, 2019. I'm the owner of a knife company, Hovey's Knives of China, where we take patterns from ancient Chinese origins of 3,000 years ago, and we use these as inspiration to make a series of cooking knives out of modern carbon and stainless steels. I'm also an author and have written 18 books, mostly outdoor books, but also including one business title. My newest work is a novel, Father of the Grooms. In this book, I trace the adventures of a Sicilian family of Louisiana origins who goes to Sicily to meet their mafia-related relatives in order to secure brides for their 2 sons. And they have many interesting adventures along the way. This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And we're now going to build a frame to put around our power hammer so that we can hoist sections of it from time to time. The recommendation is that you fill this base with sand for added stability. Well, I have sources of dry sand and can do that, but in order to put sand in this base, obviously this hammer has to be lifted from it. So I need a permanent eye hook strong enough to be able to lift and manipulate these components. So I'm going to build a 4-foot wide cage out of 4x4 timbers and other things to put around it. Now that the hammer has been moved to the other side of the shop, I have sufficient floor space that I can actually lay out my timbers and nail them together prior to putting them up. This timber is special. Out of the 7 4x4s that I got, this one has the fewest knots in this 4-foot section I'm going to cut right now. And this is going to be the beam that actually supports the weight of the power hammer. The first build we're actually going to complete is a base plate, and this is 1-inch spruce, and it's on a piece of plywood from the shipping crate. And what's going to happen to this is I'm going to nail it to the plywood, then it'll be put down on the concrete floor. Since I'm building to 7 feet rather than 8, I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece of plywood while I've got all my cutting equipment out. This is the eye bolt that'll actually go in to the timber that'll support the hammer when I lift it, as well as other things that I move about the hammer. And I drilled a 1/2-inch hole, and now I'm screwing it just through the wood to get it on the other side. I've laid out my 4x7 sheet of plywood here on the floor, and we're arranging the other components of the crib so we can actually use some blocks of 4x4 as well as some steel reinforcing on these corners. And at the very bottom, a 2x4 sill. I'm putting together the sub-assemblies that'll actually support this central column that'll carry most of the weight of the power hammer when I lift it. And because I can't move these sections of walls once we get them assembled, I'm going to have to assemble it vertically, which is a little bit awkward, but with one guy, that's about the best I can do. And I'm about to put in the first footer over there, which will connect the middle and the back 4x4s and have the walls start to stand vertical. To help stabilize the footer, I'm going to put a screw down in that concrete, a restraining bolt. And we've gone back and we've rented our concrete drill again. And now I can set the anchor bolts. As you tighten up on the anchor bolts, once they're set in the concrete, this bulb down here expands this piece of metal into the concrete, and so that's what holds it tight. We have 1/2 of the base of the stall bolted to the floor and about to attach the central column. Now this column right now is not supported by anything. It will freestand on its base so long as there's not a breath of wind or even so much as a gnat sneeze. Now we're going to set that anchor hole, and I'm going to wallow out the hole a little bit. The first one I drilled was a little too tight, so we're going to purposefully enlarge it, particularly since I'm not going to have any way to sweep the drilling debris away from the hole. The anchor bolt needed a little encouragement to seat well, but we tapped it down with that hammer and then tightened it up, and all did well. I'm using this scrap piece of plywood to temporarily support these other vertical members until I can get them tied in and squared away. Using the adapter on an impact wrench will enable me to use the sockets from my socket set and drive in these lag bolts. In a perfect world where everything was true and straight and plumb and 90 degrees, etc., etc., things like this wouldn't happen. But since we're dealing with natural materials which have bends and bows and twists, and the steel, it's not exactly cut at right angles nor bent that way, we get things like this happening. So I'm having to drive this bolt through from the top of this 1x into this piece of corner bracket, and I'm going to cut it off with a Dremel tool and then tighten it up closer before I set the other nuts and bolts. Now that we have the 3 4x4s anchored down to the floor, anchored up top, and also here at the bottom with that footer, this is probably stable enough that I can go ahead and take this scab of plywood off and actually put a sheet of plywood up here, which I think I can do right now. The last thing I did with my wall over here was to notch out that piece of plywood at the very top by that central 4x4, and that is so these brackets on that cross piece will be able to fit. Although we have our wall here largely up, there are some issues to address. One of which, it has a lean to the left. And secondly, there is a problem of how to manage this cap piece here. This beam which will actually support the power hammer. It now also has a piece of angle iron on it that runs the whole length of the beam and consequently weighs something like about 50 pounds. So I'm going to have to build a temporary column to hold it. We have completed our temporary support column. And then at the base of the column we use 2 pieces of 4x that were cut off the original 8-foot timbers. I need a little attitude adjustment on that side, and I need to straighten that wall before we do anything else. So we now have that beam snugged up and tight and can proceed with putting in the other half of the wall after we straighten this one up tomorrow. We are now straightening this wall, and we're calling upon our now familiar high lift jack and dead man to do the task. The Stanley level is showing us that, yeah, this wall, which was half a bubble off vertical, is now about as near vertical as we can get it and measured on this irregular plywood. So we're going to put a brace down in that corner just to hold it temporarily while we tie in the rest of the components of the crib. Well, we have our corner brace and block in now on the back side. Presently, we have two columns standing, but not fully attached. The rear one is not screwed in at the base solidly because it has a lean up top, which is not unexpected. So I am going to connect to the standing wall here, which has now been plumbed and is vertical. Fixing that anchor in the concrete is a challenge when you have a wood support. If you attempt to drive it through the half-inch hole you drilled in the wood straight down into the hole in the concrete, what's going to happen is this piece here will start to expand and it will start to set too soon. So what you do is you drive it from this side through the wood to give you sufficient room to attach your nut, bolts, and lock washers on this end. And now we can drive it down with the impact winch. Before I install the last of the three columns, I need to put a cap piece underneath our central supporting beam there to raise it a little bit. And this will connect all three of the columns in this wall. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one now. But first I have to raise the cap piece itself. Now that we have the post down, we can permanently attach it. Ever since that metal bracket has been sitting on top of that post, the temptation is to go ahead and shoot that hole and put that bolt in. But until everything was in place, notably that cap piece that we just installed, the positioning of the hole would change. But now we can go ahead and do it. We have finished installing the structural elements of this crib for the Anyang power hammer. And we're going to wind up this video here. There's still some more things I'm going to do. The inside of this crib, on both sides, is going to be lined with 16 gauge sheet metal. And I'm going to have to cut that out with a cutting torch in order to allow room to clear some of the brackets and also the rear 2x4 sill before I put that in. Right now, this thing is solid. It ain't gonna hardly wiggle. But nonetheless, it'll have sheet steel on this side. It's gonna have some cross bracing, some 2x4s on this side. The back is going to have some 2x4s across to keep it from going this way. And ultimately, I'll remove the jack and the rope from the other side, which helped straighten that wall when I built the rest of the structure. But we're doing good here. And I think because we've completed most of the wood components, we'll just call this video good. Now, I used just about everything I had in the shop. 3 different drills. Convenient to have a different bit in each one. Then, vice grips on occasion, always handy. Another drill, yeah. Sockets too numerous to even try to mention. because it seems like everything I touched was a different size. But I was able to drive them with this, which helped a lot in finishing up the latter half of this once I got it. Now, material estimate was pretty good. I used lag screws about this long, and that's what's mostly holding this together with these steel brackets. There's probably 50 pounds of steel in this structure right now, and about 450 pounds of wood, and more coming. So the very weight of the structure itself gives it stability, to say nothing of its fastenings and being concrete bolted down to the floor. So this is going to be a sturdy little structure as it needs to be. On the next episode, we're going to cut some steel and install the steel plates on either side here. But for now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe. Goodbye, God bless, and see you next time. These are some of the unique knives that we produce at Hovey's Knives of China. The Anyang Power Hammer will enable me to make forged blades for my cutlery knives, and also produce a special curvy bladed knife for my novel. Now, the first 5 chapters of the novel have been released to subscribers, and if you wish to follow the adventures of this American family, well, you can subscribe and get the book as soon as it is published. Now, presently, many of the characters have been introduced. There's been a mafia slaying in Sicily. One of the sons has been thrown out by his girlfriend in San Francisco, and he's driving across the desert in an old International Scout. And the other brother's wife is divorcing him, and Dad has decided to take the family to Sicily. Now, traveling with his family is going to be his gay hairdresser brother and their sister, as well as their mother, himself, and the 2 sons. And they are going to visit people that they have never seen and don't know very much about. Their mafia relatives take this trip a bit more seriously, and they have arranged a wedding. In fact, the group is to arrive on Monday and to be married on Friday. And more than 25,000 euros has been spent in preparations for this event. And should they dare refuse, they may meet with an unfortunate accident on their vacation in Sicily. To subscribe, go to my website, www.hoveysmith.com, and make a $20 donation using the PayPal button. To find out more about Hovey's Knives of China, go to hoveysknivesofchinablog.co. See you in the movies. Goodbye, and God bless.